Since its inception in 1908, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, also known as the FBI, has focused on crime, corruption, terrorism, and many other threats to the American way of life. The FBI is regarded as being one of the best investigative bodies in the world, with many agencies turning to the FBI for assistance in difficult cases. While the FBI is seen as a beacon of justice and at the forefront of solving crime, there are some cases that elude even the FBI. Here are 5 bizarre FBI cases that cannot be explained. Number 5. "22-year-old Elizabeth Short had big dreams of becoming an actress and breaking through in the big lights of Hollywood. In 1947, she moved from her home in Massachusetts to California to finally turn her dreams into reality. At first, things were tough, but luck seemed to be on her side. Sadly, Elizabeth would become famous for a very different reason, though. She would become known as the Black Dahlia, not for a role that she played, but for becoming one of the FBI's longest unsolved murders. On January 15, 1947, a mother and her baby were taking a stroll through a suburb of Los Angeles when they discovered the dismembered body of Elizabeth Short. She'd been dumped on an open field on South Norton Avenue, which is close to Le Maire Park. Elizabeth had been cut in half and her breasts removed before being left naked in the empty land. She also suffered a great deal, with her body being full of cuts and bruises. Despite her extensive injuries, there was not one drop of blood though, meaning that Elizabeth had met her fate elsewhere and her killer had dumped her there. Since LA police were at a total loss, they decided it was time to call in assistance of the FBI. The police had probably never seen such brutality committed against another human being. They were able to identify Elizabeth in just 56 minutes, according to the FBI's website, as her prints were already on file. This was from when she had applied for a job at an army camp in 1943, and again when she was arrested by Santa Barbara police for drinking underage. What the FBI needed to find next were the fingerprints of her killer, which proved very difficult. That was until LA newspaper The Examiner received a letter from someone who claimed to be her killer. The letter came on January 23, 1947, with other letters to follow. The initial letter derailed how the supposed killer was upset with the way he had been portrayed in the media and felt it was a complete misrepresentation of the case. Over the coming weeks, he sent another package to the editor of The Examiner, J.H. Richardson. This letter was made using newspaper clippings, most likely so the FBI would be unable to perform handwriting analysis on it. In the letter, he goes on to say, "I will give up in Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me." The letter wasn't the only disturbing thing that he sent. Accompanying the letter was Elizabeth's birth certificate, photographs, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen inside. Was the killer trying to frame someone else, or was Mark Hansen trying to confess his guilt from a distance? Sadly, the fingerprints from the FBI letter were never matched up to anyone on their database. The mystery of who killed Elizabeth Short is now 73 years old, and over time, it seems less and less likely that we'll find out the truth. Many suspects have been named over the years, but the evidence has never quite been enough to secure a conviction. Number 4. The escape from Alcatraz is one of the most famous prison escapes in the world. It has firmly nestled itself into pop culture, with a plethora of films exploring the mystery and giving it a Hollywood twist. In 1934, US authorities saw the need to reform Alcatraz and turned it into the harshest maximum security prison on the planet. Until its closure in 1963, Alcatraz was located on an island known as The Rock in San Francisco Bay. Its original purpose was to house Civil War criminals and captives, but as time moved on, the FBI saw the need for a high-security prison to house the worst of the worst in society. Alcatraz was known to be an impenetrable force as it was surrounded by icy cold, choppy waters that no man would be able to survive in for very long. Along with that, the prison itself had enforced iron bars and strict patrol routines. Many men had attempted to escape the perils of Alcatraz, but none of them were successful. Either they were caught by guards or perished due to the brutal conditions of the water that surrounded the prison. However, 3 men managed to pull off one of the most baffling prison escapes in history that even leaves the FBI scratching their heads to this day. John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Frank Morris all escaped from their cells on June 12, 1962. On the night prior, June 11, 1962, made their escape as 3 men had managed to make a drill out of random objects they had acquired over a few months. The 3 prisoners hid their holes as they knew if their plan was discovered, the punishment would be much more severe than anything they had ever experienced. Clearly, they had to make fake heads using plaster and real human hair. They bundled up their bedding and clothes under the sheets to make it appear as though someone was asleep in their bed. When the time was right, the 3 men made their way through the makeshift holes onto a utility corridor. From there, they were able to make their way to the prison roof, get over the fence, and make it to the edge of the island. The 3 men had fashioned a boat out of scrap wood and whatever they found around the prison. Many have theorized that the conditions of the water were too harsh and that the 3 men perished due to elements, but the FBI aren't so sure. The only pieces of evidence ever found was a paddle, a homemade life jacket, and some other bits and pieces that could have belonged to the 3 men. In 2013, San Francisco police received a letter from someone claiming to be John Anglin. He claimed that his brother, Clarence, died in 2008 and that Frank Morris died in 2005, all of them making it into old age. In the letter, John said that he was 83 years old and suffering from cancer himself and would only reveal his location if he was guaranteed to not be sent back to prison. This letter wasn't made public until 2018, meaning that if the letter is genuine, it's likely that John has since passed away. 58 years later, the FBI are still scratching their heads as to what became of the only 3 men to successfully escape Alcatraz. The handwriting analysis on the letter isn't questioned, however, the results came back inconclusive. Number 3. The name D.B. Cooper is a misnomer. When Cooper approached the county of Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon on November 24, 1971, he used the name Dan Cooper to purchase a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington. Due to his name being reported incorrectly in the news, D.B. Cooper cemented himself in the history books as one of the world's most mysterious criminals. The irony is that Dan Cooper was most likely a pseudonym, and the press still managed to get it wrong. Dan Cooper boarded the flight without incident and to staff appeared to be just another businessman making an important cross-country trip. According to the FBI website, he ordered himself a bourbon and soda and settled into his seat. A short time after takeoff, Cooper passed a note to an air hostess indicating he had a bomb in his briefcase. She took a seat as instructed by Cooper, to which he opened his businessman-style briefcase to reveal wires and what appeared to be sticks of explosives. He instructed the hostess that he wanted 4 parachutes and $200,000, all in $20 bills. Not wanting to provoke Cooper any further, the air hostess made her way to the captain so he could escalate this to the appropriate authorities. It seems that the captain of the flight had managed to secure a deal for Cooper in exchange for letting the passengers leave unharmed in Seattle. He would get what he requested. This happened without incident, and Cooper instructed the captain along with a few crew members to depart once again, this time to Mexico City. Everyone on board was paralyzed with sheer panic and confusion. They were unsure as to whether this was a sick joke, or if the businessman dressed in a suit and a black tie and sunglasses was serious with his threats. Between Seattle and Reno, at around 8 p.m., Cooper jumped from the plane using one of the parachutes provided, taking the $200,000 with him. With the plane and crew all unharmed, they were able to land safely, but where was Cooper? As soon as the FBI heard of the hijacking, they became immediately involved, but even now in 2020, the mystery is no closer to being solved. There are two main suspects in the Dan Cooper case, but there's never been solid enough evidence to close the case. The Norjack, also known as Northwest hijacking, committed by a man calling himself Dan Cooper, has become one of the biggest mysteries in aviation history. The FBI is still reviewing the case, but don't seem to be any closer than they were in 1971. Number 2. The 1920s were a time of boom and bust for America. Having just come out of the other side of World War I, leaving many with physical and psychological injuries, not to mention the financial cost not just of the war, but to the damage done to all countries involved. The US seemed to be getting itself back on its feet in 1920 as they found themselves in a post-war economic boom. The Wall Street bombing on September 16, 1920, in the Wall Street financial district of New York would shake citizens and companies alike, reminding them that violence wasn't just reserved for the battlefield. On that fateful September day, a man driving a horse-pulled cart made his way through Wall Street and stopped just outside of the US office. It appeared that the driver was simply unloading whatever was in his cart, but sadly, the truth was far more deadly. The driver was seen moving hastily away from the cart, and soon a large explosion emanated from the cart, sending metal fragments blasting through the air. In the explosion, 30 people lost their lives, with a further 300 being injured. The FBI quickly became involved as this was seen as an act of domestic terrorism, with members of the public calling for the perpetrators to be brought to justice. One theory is that American anarchist fighters were responsible for the bombings. Flyers were found that called for the release of political prisoners and that the Wall Street bombings was just a start. The FBI was never able to conclusively say who they think is responsible for the bombings. Just hours after tragedy struck, cleanup crews were dispatched and all evidence was removed. Life carried on for the people of Wall Street, making it one of the biggest mysteries in US history. The case of Tammy Is A Wiki haunts FBI investigators. The case is now 28 years old, and it seems that no one is any closer to solving the mystery behind her death. The FBI is even offering a $50,000 reward for anyone who can provide information that leads to an arrest. Tammy was just 21 years old when she went missing in Illinois. She was making the 1,017-mile journey from her home in New Jersey to the University of Iowa when she mysteriously vanished. On August 23, 1992, her abandoned 1985 Pontiac T1000 was found on I-80 at mile marker 83 in Illinois. At first, investigators believed that Tammy may have run into car trouble and stopped on the side of the road to either seek assistance or hitchhike to her university, where she could have called someone to recover her car. But when friends and family didn't hear from Tammy for over a week, they began to worry it was much more serious than that. A week later, on September 1st, 1992, Tammy's body was found on I-44 in Lawrence County, Missouri, which is about 480 miles away from where she was last seen in Illinois. She'd been wrapped in a blanket and was secured with duct tape and had been stabbed to death. The FBI quickly became involved as this crime crossed state lines, and different authorities were finding it hard to centralize the investigation. In the last hours of her disappearance, witnesses described seeing what was described as a tractor trailer or a pickup truck parked behind Tammy's car. The FBI believe that this vehicle is key to their investigation. If you have any information about the murder of Tammy Is A Wiki, you're urged to contact your local FBI office. Over 25 years later, and the tragic murder of Tammy Is A Wiki still cannot be explained by investigators at the FBI. With the passage of time, the FBI hopes that advances in forensic science will lead to the truth, but until then, it remains a mystery. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.